Greetings, Byra.
Hi.
It's good to have you here all the way from Mongolia.
Yeah. It's a 14-hour difference now.
14-hour difference?
Yeah, and a jet lag now.
Yeah, I'm familiar with that 14-hour difference when you go there and go to China and other places in the world. So tell us about how you were exposed to the way of Christ and his apostles, these patterns from Acts. How are you exposed to this? What's the beginnings look like for you?
After I graduated my master's in Singapore Bible College, so I came back in my country. I was a full-time lecturer in a Bible college. And at the same time, I started ministering in a Evangelical Alliance as a president and a board member, and then later a president in the Evangelical Alliance. So, and then before that, I actually, Mongolia is very new in Christianity. So I started ministering at church 14, 15 years old after just believed in Christ. And then continually keep growing in the local church. And when I studying in Bible college and teaching in full-time in a Bible college, there's one thing is missing, which is in a Bible college, leaders are growing, leaders are learning about the church itself didn't much grow. So, however we are Christian evangelizing others, the church itself is not really growing in a theology, in education, that who God is. It's more like focused on who am I. And then even in a Bible college, many people come and study, and then they benefited, and then they move or they leave. But the church didn't much benefited. So overall, when I was ministering in a Evangelical Alliance, that's not only my church situation or the church around, but it's a whole nation. The church didn't much growing well in the way of Christ. And so I was quite worried about how to make a mass theological education. And that time, the build actually introduced through Asian Evangelical Alliance when I was in the MEA. So we pretty much interested, and then we met and then we talked and we heard the church-based theological education system, the CUBE, and those things are really impacting my I really moved by the church-based theological education, because I'm already in a theological training and teacher, but that's something didn't really help the whole church.
So let me get this straight. So you're part of Asia Evangelical Alliance, which is an alliance of 20-some countries in Asia, across Asia. You're also then, as a part of that, you're part of Mongolian Asian Alliance. But then when the idea of you were really impacted that the church itself was not growing in its faith, is what you were saying.
Yes, because I worried that we just become a Christian in the whole nation. I mean, many people become Christian in Mongolia, and then we are first generation of Christians, supposed to be more learn about what the Bible, what the God. But instead of that, there are so many missionaries coming in. We introduced so many cultures. We introduced so many denominations coming in. And then later it looks like, I feel like we are first generation of Christian, suddenly finished up with the first generation, because believing in Jesus is one thing, but learning learning about the way of Christ is another thing, because the principles, they need to walk on it, not only listen. And it feels like we become a first generation of Christian and under a lot of attention, but stop learning, stop growing, and became like first generation and start going die. Something that kind of feeling I had, because I'm a theological educator and a Bible teacher. So I feel like the leaders are learning more, but in the church only inspirational speaks, motivational speaks, nothing much more about the principles. So church itself become like somewhere and going to be stuck. And that kind of feeling was I had. And that's why the church-based theological education, when introduced, I really impacted that idea.
So it sounds like you and I know you well enough to know that you had a discontent. You had a real discontent that was growing inside of you that when you compared to what the first generation of Mongolian Christians were doing and receiving was different than what you read and different what you saw from the New Testament model, the way of Christ. You said it's one thing to know Christ, but it's a different thing to be about Christ's mission.
Oh yeah, it's something like that.
What did you explain? What you mean by the difference of that, and what you heard about the patterns in those days? What's the difference between just the leaders knowing Christ and preaching Christ every Sunday morning versus what you heard as a different paradigm, a different set of patterns?
And then when we see a Bible, and now we are much more educated than people in the first generation. First century Christians. We read. We have a lot of resource everywhere, but we didn't use it in the whole Mongolian church or whatever. Not only Mongolia, maybe many everywhere. And then many years of Christian, they believed in Christ in 10 years, 20 years, but there are a lot of questions no one answered. Even they themselves didn't ask by themselves. And because there's a pastor, whatever happens, they go to pastor and ask prayer and ask explanation. Whenever they go evangelize, they have questions, they never challenge themselves, just go and direct to the pastor and bring to the church. That type of thing really grown a lot in our situation in Mongolia church. So the members didn't much encouraged to learn the way of Christ and apostles. Instead of that, the leaders think, since I'm here, I am the answer of everything. So, and that means the church growth is depend on the pastor itself.
Yeah.
But then, actually, the church is the member. Every Christian, they are supposed to be growing in the way that Christ and the apostles were. They're supposed to know. They're supposed to be ready to answer the questions when they're challenged. But when I feel, even today in many churches in Mongolia, they have the easiest answer is, ask my pastor. Because the pastor is there, every answer is with him. And then the members didn't challenge to be the way of Christ.
Yeah.
So that's the burden, because I'm a lecturer in Bible college. But exactly whatever we do, the students are learning, not the church didn't learn anything. Church, almost the focus is like we training pastors to the church. The pastor is the one who answers everything. When I see the Bible, every Christians, they answer everything. They live on the principles. They pray for themselves. But in the Mongolian church, they go to the pastor to ask a prayer. They go to the pastor to answer the questions, the difficulties. Whatever they happen, they go to pastors for answers. That's, for me, it's very bad because we are first generation of Christian. Maybe if we are third and fourth generation, we have a Christian history, and then they think maybe they're bored, but maybe they think, Christianity is my father's thing. But we are not. We are first generation. And they started very nicely and then going to die with the first generation. That kind of feeling I got. But church-based theological education, when introduced by Build, that was the turning point for me. And then I grabbed that. Yeah, this is the answer. That not only the pastors educated, the members must be educated. All church, everyone needs to be educated. Not necessarily the only pastors. Because pastors have answers, they give them, but they never live in the way of Christ. That's why I introduced my Build, and then I really decided to go in that way. Especially, I was in a Evangelical Alliance, but at that time we have a lot of challenge in the church and within the leaders, a lot of arguments, a lot of problems, a lot of bylaws. because I'm a president, I need to deal with that, lot of movements, many things. But all those problems, everything is not Christians' problem, or the leaders' problem. But nothing helping the whole church, nothing helping the Christians, the members, the person to grow in the faith, grow in Christ, the way of Christ. So we just struggling in there, up there, arguing, and become an enemy, fools, become his side, my side, his side. But that's nothing help at all. So that's why I also didn't find some answers. So I decided to quit. So I quit my Bible teaching. I quit my job. I quit Evangelical Alliance. So I left Bible college. So later I initiated the organization, Leadership Development Biblical Institute, with the others. And then we continually contact with the build. And until now, we still working with the build about trying to use the curriculum the build have, the church-based theological education. We're trying to bring to Mongolia, and then introducing a church, introducing the people and leaders. But the most of the leaders didn't actually listening. But most of the church members are really listening about it.
Yeah.
That's the point. I really love it. Because some leaders, because personal barrier or whatever, the old story about the argument, whatever, they didn't much interest about it. But whenever I talk with just a normal Christians, anyone, they all agree with it. And they even move, they change, they have a lot of change coming with it.
So what you're saying is that when you introduce these patterns of Acts, these patterns of the New Testament, the leaders of the existing churches in Mongolia don't readily accept them or don't accept them at all, but the people do.
Yeah, because
why do you think that is, and how do you introduce it in a short? Just start with the first question.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is? Why do the leaders not accept it? Is it because the leaders tend to be they're the beneficiary of that pattern of church, of a Sunday morning events and Sunday morning religious services?
No. It's mainly about they were curious about it. They felt like I'm the offender because I was a previously Bible school lecturer, and then later left the Bible college, and it talks about church-based theological education, and then many people think, like he's talking about a different kind of school. It's nothing about cult, anything, but it's more about like they doesn't want to change the paradigm itself. And this is one way, because now in West, you think a Western paradigm is an old paradigm you're talking about. But for us and for Mongolia, it's a new paradigm. Because however it's old, Mongolian Christianity started just 30 years. And then they introduced everything. They didn't done it. They didn't even make it themselves. They just received something new. Every programs here didn't really fully go through it. That's why suddenly when we introduced about the church-based theological education, and they said, where are you coming from? Where are you talking about? And then they doesn't want to change all those things. And secondly, and then because I was in an Evangelical Alliance, I was in the middle of many conflicts. And then if someone sided with me, they became unfriendly with others. So in that barrier, sometimes some of the leadership doesn't want to come to this paradigm because they agree with it, but they're afraid of some unfriendly with other leaders. That's also become a barrier. And then nowadays that's why we started initiate the cohort, and then many leaders come. Half of them is active. The another half is inactive. So those inactive is really agree with the paradigm, but not brave enough to join. But they are just waiting. What result come out? What's going to happen? And then,
How do you explain this paradigm, this set of patterns to someone brand new? that you're introducing it to, whether it's a leader or a church? What's a 1-minute version or a couple? How do you summarize what this is?
To Mongolian people?
Yeah, to Mongolian people. Just how would you explain it to them?
This is nothing new or different thing that the other people thinks. It's just the same gospel. It's just the same thing. Only thing is, the Bible says we should be, every Christian should be ready to answer whatever the people asks. But now many people are not ready because they have the pastor in home, in a church. They're going to answer everything. So I always tell them, we are Christian, so we introduce the principles in the Bible. In Bible says how we deal with the things, how we deal with the celebrations, how we deal with the family, how we deal with it. It's nothing new. It's already there. But when I introduce the pastors in a Christians, it's nothing new. Which is just challenging them to follow the way of Christ. But when I introduce the pastors, I encourage them to. The Bible theology knowledge is designed to the members to grow and know the Bible and God, the way of Christ. But it's nothing about the pastors to educate it and teach them what they think they need. So I encourage the pastors and other leaders. So if you believe your members to kind of grow in the faith and know and learn about the way of Christ, and then why not we start doing this training in your church? And then I also explain about how about the paradigm that every people can learn. Either some people learn this much, some people learn that deep, but never mind. Everyone can sit together, can learn. Mm-hmm. But whatever he understands according to his educational level or whatever, that's his understanding of Christ, and then he need to work on it, not just educate, not just some give answers. He need to work on it, live with it, and then many leaders actually they like that this way, and it's supposed to be like that way. But when it comes with starting and programming in an the first principle series, many of the people leaders doesn't not ready to not ready to keep going on it. They just want to listen. Oh, that's good. I agree with that, but doesn't want to apply it because they feel they feel like it will be changing everything.
So Byra, as a final question, what encouragement would you give to someone who's in the beginning of this journey? You have committed a lot to this in your personal life. You've left the Bible teaching role. And you've involved yourself in the church, and you've involved yourself in telling other churches and networks of churches about these patterns. Mm-hmm. And so you've done a lot of personal sacrifice, and there's still a lot of sacrifices you continue to make to this day. Mm-hmm. And yet you're still part of it locally of moving this forward, and you're still part of this globally moving this forward. So what encouragement would you give to someone who is discontent like you were about just the top leaders of churches receiving training, but no one else getting access to that level of training? What encouragement would you give to someone?
If I understand correctly, sorry, my English is not so well, and I will say what we do is nothing about the totally different thing we do. It's only the way how we do is very important. So in Mongolian situation, and then many leaders they trying hard to minister every people. But I encourage them, just let the Christians, let them work for themselves. The pastor is not necessary to reach every person and then tell them what they to do, but let them learn about what God's telling them and principles. Just give them principles. So and then let's grow together with the members. Nothing about. So I will probably say, when we start doing this paradigm and the first principles, as well as the church-based theological education, and then it's very easy to start seeing the change in the church. Now, in many churches we are working with, every week we saw the change in their church ministry. They even didn't. We even seen suddenly the church members become very active. Suddenly we saw some of the leaders become confessing how it affected them. And sometimes some of the church members come and share about their stories we never heard. Because when we start doing this way, we will see the growth. We will see each person, how they changing, how they walking, how they living is changed. And then leaders, when we see the growth, that is the nice thing, that every leader wants to see the change. But we often try to change by myself, didn't give them a chance to change themselves.
Yeah.
And that's why I will tell, just do what the way of Christ and apostles we do ourselves. We follow the way that teach them the principles, the Bible, the way of Christ, instead of telling them every movement, what they do, every decision, what they're supposed to do. And then that's not organic. That's not the way of Christ. In a book of Acts and in the Bible, it's always like that way. And then they moved somewhere, they started the church. Problem happens, they have answers. If someone speak wrong, and then other come and correct him and helping them. Nothing about, this is my chance to do it. Nothing about, detailed works, how to do it. But they all learn in the principles and they live on it. And then later the whole church grows. They can see every change come up. Yeah, so I will probably say, just teach the people about the way of Christ and principles, and then they will grow by themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the best thing that leaders wanted to see.
Simple. It's simple, Byra. I love it that we equip the people with the principles. That's our job as leaders in the churches, is to equip them with the principles.
Yeah.
And to be on a growth path with them was the other thing that you say, is that we're all on a growth path. We're all growing in the faith. And it's not about the right things or the rules of the faith. It's about the principles of the faith in a way of living as a family of Christ in that faith. So, Byra, it's been I look forward to the future with you. There's a lot of work ahead of us.
Yeah.
But your involvement in the global movement as well. I know we have a lot of calls together, and your investment into the global movement through the years as well is just an encouragement to everyone. So thanks for doing this.
Yeah. Thanks for walking with us.
Yeah, it's a journey.